Welcome back to another episode of Particle Word for Word. This one's a wild ride, so strap in. Let's start with a mouse. Not the kind scratching around in your pantry, not the one darting across your kitchen tiles. I'm talking about a mouse that exists in a place far removed from cupboards or traps. This one was built, engineered in a lab, not born exactly, but assembled, nurtured from the level of individual genes. And those genes? Some of them don't belong to any ordinary mouse. Some of them belong to a mammoth, a woolly mammoth. Let that sit for a second. You've got a tiny mouse, warm and twitchy, breathing under the lab lights. But inside it, written into its cells, is a piece of genetic history, something that's been extinct for thousands of years. A gene for fat metabolism, one for thick, shaggy fur, small fragments clipped from the past and grafted into the present. Now take that idea and follow it forward. Imagine, one day it's not just a mouse, it's an elephant. Then, somewhere far away, in a cold and forgotten landscape, a living, breathing creature steps through the snow. Huge, hairy, familiar. Not quite a clone, not quite a memory. Is it a mammoth? Or is it something new? This is the strange, slightly surreal world of de-extinction. And that's what we're exploring today. A world where extinction isn't necessarily forever, where scientists are starting to treat DNA like a puzzle, one that might be solvable, with the right pieces in place, where the boundary between natural and artificial is starting to shift beneath our feet. Because science isn't static, it's curious, it's restless, it asks questions like, what if, what next, why not? And in this case, it's asking, what if we didn't have to say goodbye? What if we could bring something back? The woolly mammoth has become a kind of scientific icon, a mascot for resurrection. Not because it's the only animal we've lost, not even because it's the most important, but because, strangely enough, it's plausible. The woolly mammoth is close. Genetically speaking, it's not that different from its modern cousin, the Asian elephant. Over 99% of their DNA is shared, so instead of starting from scratch, scientists have a head start. They're not just dreaming about mammoths, they're actively building toward them. And that journey starts, quite literally, at the genetic level. CRISPR, gene editing, embryo implantation. These are the tools in the kit. They let us cut, copy, paste, and in doing so, they let us imagine a version of the world where some things lost might not stay lost forever. But that idea of bringing something back comes loaded with implications. Because the past isn't just a museum you can raid for parts, it's a web, a system, a fragile balance of predators, prey, climate, vegetation, microbes, everything. When a species goes extinct, it doesn't just vanish, it leaves a hole, and over time the ecosystem adjusts, it compensates, it moves on. So when we talk about bringing something back, we're not really rewinding the tape, we're dropping a new player into a changed game. Is that fair? Is it safe? Is it even possible to recreate the full complexity of a species, when all we have is its DNA? And that's the other thing. DNA is only part of the story. It doesn't hold the whole animal. It doesn't include behavior or social structures or migratory instincts. It can't teach a mammoth how to raise its young. It doesn't come with memories, or herd dynamics, or fear. So even if we succeed, even if we build something that looks like a mammoth and walks like a mammoth, is it really the same? Or is it something else entirely? That's the slippery, fascinating space today's science is walking into. And it's not just mammoths. Once you start asking whether extinction is reversible, the list of possibilities gets longer fast. The passenger pigeon, the Tasmanian tiger, the gastric brooding frog, even the humble Christmas Island rat. Animals that vanished, sometimes decades ago, sometimes centuries ago, suddenly feel within reach. They whisper from the archive, from the samples in freezers, from scraps of tissue and bone. And the lab listens. But behind all this science, behind the technical milestones and carefully calibrated experiments, is something deeper. A human story. Because this isn't just about biology, it's about how we see ourselves, our role in the natural world, our desire to fix things, or maybe our desire to control them. Are we doing this because we believe we can repair the damage we've done? Or because we want to prove that we can? Some people see de-extinction as a kind of redemption, a way of apologizing to nature. Others see it as hubris, a dangerous experiment in playing God. And still others ask, why bring back extinct species when we can't even protect the ones we've still got? That's the tension at the heart of this field. On one side, breathtaking potential. On the other, real ethical, ecological, and philosophical risks. It's not black and white. There are no easy answers. But there's a reason we keep reaching for these questions. A reason mammoths show up again and again in the headlines, the labs, the imaginations of scientists and sci-fi writers alike. They represent more than just a scientific goal. They're a symbol of possibility, of consequence, of how far we've come and how far we're willing to go. So, when a team of researchers starts editing mouse DNA to resemble something from the Ice Age, it's not just an experiment, it's a statement. We're not done. We're still trying. We're still learning what it means to hold this kind of power. And we're still deciding what we'll do with it. This episode is based on an article that looks right into the heart of that mystery. Of Woolly Mice and Mammoths, written by Jackson Ryan and read by Alyshia Gatani. It's sharp, thoughtful, and full of big questions. And those questions don't stop with science. They spill out into ethics, into politics, into the future. So before we dive in, take a second, picture that mouse again, the one in the lab. Now zoom out to the scientists hovering nearby, the microscope, the gene maps on the screen. Zoom out further, to the frozen tundra, to the elephants, to the grasslands and forests and oceans and species clinging on today. This story isn't just about what we can bring back, it's about what we're choosing to do with what we still have. Alright, let's get into the article.
Take a lab mouse, add a powerful genetic engineering tool, a sprinkle of woolly mammoth DNA, and wait a few days. The result? An adorable and potentially scientifically profound creation. Venture capital-funded genetic engineering company Colossal Biosciences has unveiled the woolly mouse. This golden fuzzball represents the company's lofty de-extinction goal. Colossal aims to resurrect long-lost species, including the thylacine and the dodo. Just to be clear, woolly mice only exist in Colossal's labs, so you can't go and buy one yet. The creation is driven by the desire to understand how modifying particular genes might change the physical characteristics of an organism. But their ambitions go far beyond that. Colossal co-founder and CEO Ben Lamb says the woolly mouse brings the company a step closer to our goal of bringing back the woolly mammoth. Mammothus primogenus last roamed the tundras of Siberia and Alaska some 4,000 years ago. Colossal claims an animal similar to the woolly mammoth could be revived by 2028. While the woolly mouse offers a glimpse into the future, there's still a long way to go. The making of a masterpiece. The woolly mouse is the culmination of decades of research. Geneticists have pieced together an organism's genetic code, extracted ancient DNA, and advanced computational biology. Their efforts have been spurred by the gigantic leap forward by a genetic engineering technology which has revolutionised the field, CRISPR. To build the woolly mouse, Colossal studies the genomes or genetic blueprints of more than 50 woolly mammoths. Over several decades, researchers extracted ancient DNA from woolly mammoth specimens recovered from permafrost. Those genomes aren't always perfect, but by pooling them together, the blueprint of a long-lost species has been recreated. In tandem, scientists have sequenced the genomes of various elephant species: Asian, African, savanna, and forest elephants. Colossal's Chief Science Officer Beth Shapiro says that they identify the differences between the mammoth DNA and elephant DNA. We first look at all of the places in the genome where all the mammoths are the same as each other, but different from the elephants, said Beth. Those differences are what makes a mammoth a mammoth. Although woolly mammoths share more than 99% of their genome with Asian elephants, more than 1,600 genes are affected by the differences. With the blueprint and CRISPR, the team can make many of those changes. CRISPR can make highly specific edits to DNA, cutting and pasting genes with high precision. This is how Colossal created woolly mice. They found 9 genes linked to hair texture, length and growth, and one linked to fat metabolism. Many of the genes had previously shown to result in different physical characteristics in mice. For example, the FAM83G gene creates woolly hair, whilst the TGFA gene creates wavy hair. 3 genes were classified as mammoth-specific, including one linked to fat metabolism, FABP2. Some of these genes are motivated by looking at elephants, and some of them are pure trait engineering, says Beth. That showcases our approach to de-extinction. The team were able to make multiple gene edits in individual mice using 2 techniques. By directly editing a fertilised egg, they were able to edit 5 genes simultaneously. Using another method in which they introduced traits via stem cells, they were able to edit 7 genes. Ben says this is a significant breakthrough. Besides the adorability factor, we did not factor in how cute they would be. Now we have produced healthy living animals that have the exact phenotypes that we predicted, based on using ancient DNA and computational analysis in genome engineering, says Ben. Colossal's reasoning for creating woolly mice is twofold. Firstly, it helps to validate their gene editing strategies. If Colossal is able to achieve its goal of recreating the woolly mammoth, high-efficiency genetic engineering is a prerequisite. The mouse model is one way of validating Colossal's methods, allowing them to quickly evaluate how genetic modifications alter observable traits, at least in mice for now. Secondly, it could be used to evaluate the genetic variations related to mammoths and how they may relate to cold adaptation. For example, future experiments will evaluate the impact of the fat metabolism gene on different diets and under different temperature conditions. We haven't done these experiments yet because they're long-term experiments, says Beth. They're under review by our ethical board right now. There's showmanship to Colossal's advances that's hard to ignore. Ben sees the woolly mouse as inspirational. While he acknowledges Colossal's work can be overhyped, Ben says he has received hundreds of hand-drawn pictures from children excited about the genetics and STEM. I think a teacher is going to be able to talk about this in their classroom, says Ben. Michael Archer is a paleontologist at the University of New South Wales. He spearheaded efforts to resurrect the thylacine via cloning in the early 2000s and is impressed with the work. This is a very important demonstration that the goal of the Mammoth Project, to transform the genome of an Asiatic elephant to produce a cold-adapted mammoth-like proboscidean, just as nature did millions of years ago, is almost certainly achievable using existing gene editing technology, says Michael. Colossal has prepared a scientific paper on the woolly mouse detailing the work, which they expect to release soon. The term de-extinction conjures up an enduring pop culture icon, Jurassic Park. But before you get excited about the prospect of a dinosaur revival, science won't ever have a good enough DNA to make that happen. De-extinction in the colossal sense isn't about resurrecting one-to-one examples of extinct species. Instead, Colossal believes its de-extinction program has 2 benefits. Bringing back the physical characteristics of extinct species can help restore the ecosystems they used to inhabit, and developing new technologies can help conservation efforts. It's an important distinction. Colossal can't bring back the woolly mammoth. Once a species is extinct, it stays extinct. But what Colossal hopes to do is create a living, breathing mammoth-like creature, an animal which walks and stomps and trumpets like a mammoth, even if it's a shaggy Asian elephant. Some scientists believe mammoths played a role in compacting the permafrost. This, in turn, prevents the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and without mammoths, permafrost would continue to melt. Other scientists are less sure that mammoths would have such an effect on the ecosystem. Vincent Lynch is an evolutionary and developmental biologist at the University of Buffalo, USA. I have no doubt that they were going to be able to get to the point where they can get an Asian elephant that looks similar to a woolly mammoth, says Vincent. Given enough time, they're going to be able to do it. Vincent led research comparing woolly mammoth and elephant genomes in 2015. While he believes making one woolly mammoth-like elephant is possible, the idea of making enough to alter ecosystems does not seem plausible. Their stated goal is just total bullshit, says Vincent. Like, it's unreasonable. It's important to note that except for its striking physical appearance, the woolly mouse isn't all that different from a regular lab mouse. While it has woolly features, the genetic changes haven't been proven as relevant for cold adaptation. When made in an elephant, these genetic tweaks may not have had the same effect. For now, mice will just have to do. It would be great if that animal model could be an elephant, but it can't be because ethically that doesn't make any sense, says Beth. Also, logistically, it doesn't make any sense because elephants have a 22-month gestation and they reach sexual maturity as teenagers. When moving from woolly mice to woolly elephants, the ethical dilemmas will be stark. There have been long, curly questions about what it could mean to create a mammoth-like elephant. How many would you need to make? How can you manage them? When does an Asian elephant become a mammoth, and does that distinction matter? What if they don't fit the ecological role they're designed to fill? These questions remain unanswered. Colossal and other de-extinction proponents claim new technology is how humanity fights its way out of the current 6th mass extinction. It would be amazing if we could just stand back and let everything catch up using evolution by natural selection, but it's too late, says Beth. I'm not saying that we should stop traditional approaches to conservation, but I am saying that we also need to be investing into research around the risks and rewards of doing other things. While there are many unanswered questions, 59 animal species are listed as critically endangered in WA alone. A further 191 are listed as endangered or vulnerable. Traditional approaches to conservation are sorely required because once these species die, they're lost forever. Colossal can't change that. But if its work can help to protect or restore species, should we try it?
That's the question that lingers long after the article ends. Because the science? It's fascinating. No doubt about that. Editing genes. Resurrecting traits from extinct animals. Reassembling the biological past like a high-stakes jigsaw puzzle. It's bold. It's ambitious. It's exactly the kind of thing that makes science feel electric. But once the buzz settles, once we've heard the story of the woolly mouse, once we've taken in the idea of mammoths stepping back onto the frozen stage of the world, there's something deeper that sticks. A quiet discomfort, a sense of wonder, a whole mix of feelings we can't easily name. We're not just talking about animals here, we're talking about power, about limits, about what we're willing to do with the tools we've created. We live in a time where we can edit life, where we can cut genes with the same ease we edit a sentence. Delete, rewrite, replace. DNA used to be a fixed thing, something handed down, inherited, passed from one generation to the next like a biological heirloom. And now it's a draft. Something editable, something we can tweak, customize, upgrade. That power opens doors. It lets us imagine solutions to problems we used to think were permanent. It lets us dream of reversing extinction, healing genetic diseases, strengthening species. But it also asks something of us. It asks us to slow down, to think. Because just because we can doesn't always mean we should. The mammoth is a perfect example of this tension. On paper, it's almost irresistible. A majestic Ice Age creature, brought back to life with modern technology. There's a romance to it, a sense of redemption, of righting a cosmic wrong. But ecosystems aren't static. They're not waiting for us to restore them to some imagined golden age. They change, they adapt, they move on. The tundra today isn't the tundra of 10,000 years ago. The grasses are different, the temperatures are different. The predators and prey, the entire biological rhythm, has shifted. So what happens when we drop a new old animal into that system? Even if it's just like a mammoth, it isn't. It hasn't been raised in a herd. It hasn't migrated. It hasn't been hunted by saber-tooths. It doesn't carry the instincts shaped by millennia of trial and error. It carries something else, a kind of scientific optimism, a human fingerprint, a blend of DNA and determination. That's beautiful in a way, but it's also a bit haunting. Because what if the world we bring these animals back into isn't ready for them? Or worse, what if we're not? What if we're still too focused on the spectacle? What if we're still chasing the headline, Mammoth returns, instead of asking the harder questions. Like, what does this animal eat? Where does it roam? What happens if it suffers? What happens if it doesn't survive? And why exactly are we doing this? That last one might be the biggest question of all. Why bring a species back? Is it about fixing past mistakes, restoring ecological balance, advancing science? Or is it about us? About our need to create, to control, to prove that nothing, not even extinction, is beyond our reach? There's no single answer, no universal motivation. Some researchers genuinely hope to repair damaged ecosystems. Others want to preserve genetic diversity. Some just want to see what's possible. And some, let's be honest, are chasing the legacy, the glory, the firsts. But whatever the reason, it's crucial that we don't get swept up in the excitement without also engaging with the consequences. Because every action in nature creates ripples, and every resurrection comes with trade-offs. Bringing back extinct species might help ecosystems, but it could also disrupt them. It could drain resources away from the animals still here, still alive, still fighting. The animals we ignore every day. The frogs disappearing in the tropics. The birds vanishing from the skies. The insects no one bothers to name. There's a real risk that de-extinction becomes a distraction, a flashy new toy in the conservation toolkit, while the quieter, messier, less glamorous work gets sidelined. Because let's face it, saving an endangered fungus doesn't go viral. Saving a mouse that looks like a mammoth? That's got media legs. But science isn't a popularity contest, or at least it shouldn't be. It's about truth, about impact, about responsibility, and maybe, somewhere in the heart of this movement to bring things back, is a wish to make amends. To say, we see what we've done, we want to fix it. That's a beautiful impulse. But healing doesn't always come through science. Sometimes it comes through restraint, through protection, through deciding that the best thing we can do is to stop breaking what's still whole. So maybe the most radical act isn't resurrection. Maybe it's conservation. Maybe it's attention. Maybe it's love. Love for the messy, inconvenient, living world that's still here. Hanging on. Asking for space, for breath, for care. And maybe, if we gave it that, we wouldn't need to bring anything back. So let's keep talking. Let's stay curious. Let's hold space for science and ethics and story. Because these aren't separate conversations. They're the same one, the same thread, pulling us forward into a future where the line between what's possible and what's right gets thinner every day. Thanks for being part of that conversation. Thanks for listening. This has been Particle Word for Word. For more science stories like this, visit Particle WA at particle.scitech.org.au.